Hey there, Dango Stu here. Today's video is about getting Renko back from Coast Marine and is proudly sponsored by MarineEngine.com. Finally got the call from Shane saying Renko was ready to go, so headed over there in Red Dwarf to pick it up. While I was there, I took the opportunity just to throw the fuel in 100 litres at a time. I only put 400 in, 200 each side. It's nice and cheap at the moment, but you know, I thought that'll do, get us going. But it also gave me the opportunity to mark the dipstick on it so I can at least know where those, 100, 200 and 300 are, because it already had 100 litres in it.
Certainly going a lot better. By their own admission, it's not perfect. Need to really look at that coupling between the prop shaft and the gearbox. But I'll talk to you more about that when we're somewhere quieter. Got the engine bay open at the moment, so I can keep an eye on things. And most of the noise comes from the engine itself, not from the exhaust.
After the initial testing was done, Vic and I went for a little cruise, and that's actually when I had my first problem, which was in the wheelhouse and noticed the temperature suddenly go up to 100 degrees. Sits about 76 degrees, pretty much bang on 76 all the time, but all of a sudden looked down 100 degrees. Turned out that one of the hoses for the freshwater system in the engine had popped off and dumped all that water into the bilge. Raw water was still flowing, but no water for it to cool. So ended up actually dropping the anchor, and turned out I didn't have 20 litres of water on board, so gave Paul a ring and he kindly came out and brought me a jerry can of water, put the hose back on, swapped the old spiral hose clamp for one of the T-bolt clamps and filled it up and off we went. But, a bit of a teething problem. Obviously it wasn't done up tight enough is my guess.
Another problem I've been having is with this shutoff solenoid. Solenoid's working perfectly electrically. The magnet's good, the current's good. It's actually an alignment issue. You can see here, so the trouble is this pulls in a straight line and obviously this turns in an arc, so somehow you've got to sort of find an average, but you can see at the moment at its furthest point it's actually binding up. That's way too far this way to not bind up the shaft of the solenoid. So I need to rotate it slightly. I just undid the bolts and there's enough play to get me where I need to be, I think. So I'm going to move it out this way and tighten the bolts up again. Alright, so I don't want this overextended, so this will help me also figure out, if I look here where it flops back to, it's pretty much where I want the arm to sit on the spindle here too. So let's go about there. I've got to say, after the hard slog of getting this boat up and running, it's so nice to have it usable and just be fine-tuning things. Fine-tuning's fun compared to the major repairs. Alright, get that quite tight. Alright, I'm going to need like a screwdriver or something to do that sort of, drum brake hook like we do here. Okay. What actually seems to work best is leaving everything backed off a little bit and letting the solenoid rotate. It's not like it can go anywhere, but actually leaving it a bit looser seems to actually work better. let's give that a shot. I really do need to get a new boot at least to keep the dirt out, that's for sure. Alright, we'll see how that goes for a while. If it gives me any more trouble, I probably will just change to a Morse cable, but I'll give it one more shot in this configuration. Now the boat's running, I'm obviously sort of, you know, projecting my mind onto going for these first few dives and figuring out what are the absolute basics I need. I've got to get these scuba cylinders recertified and refilled. I'll go and check them. If there's a full one, I'll actually keep it here and maybe get the other one sent off, so at least there's one that's got some air in case we need it for some sort of emergency or a good opportunity. The other thing I really need to organise is a boarding ladder. I am going to cut a door in the transom, put a marlin board, like a swim platform on the back, and have a ladder off that as well. But obviously that's not going to happen overnight, you know, it's going to take some time to make that happen. So what I really want to do is, here we are at a wharf at the moment, but look at getting a ladder that I can mount here. I was looking at the ladder that Pedley uses on his yacht, and it's actually kind of cool. It's a little bit like this style. Oh, here we go. Oh, these are some reels I got too. One's a Daiwa reel and the other one is a Roddy. Old reels, but I'm going to pull them apart and give them a service, put new line on, all that kind of thing. So that'll be a fun little project too. So that was a nice little gift from a mate. But getting distracted as always. Now this one I'm actually going to put on Vicky's little yacht. I think it'll suit it well. But what I noticed is Dave had a similar thing for his yacht that was removable. I can't really mount anything here because this is where you get on and off the boat, and obviously you'll just trip over it if it was here. So the way his worked is it just sat on the deck with some stoppers, did a turnover, had similar arms like this that go into the side of the boat to stop it turning right under, and then, you know, you drop the ladder down. All he did was put it in and then have a couple of lines that go off to cleats to secure it temporarily. So that may be a good option for us to get in and out of the boat when we do the dives until we do the full transom door swim platform type thing. The other real priority is getting the Sav winch, anchor winch installed. When I had the problem with the cooling and dropped an anchor while I waited for Paul to bring me some water, I'm keeping water on board now, as you can probably guess, but it was quite hard to lift the anchor back up by hand, you know, so I think getting that anchor winch installed is a priority as well. So anchor winch, cylinders certified and filled, and a boarding ladder, and that's kind of the bare minimum we need to get out there and start having a few adventures with this boat finally. This is the winch I'm going to be using. This rope was just to help lift it on board. It's quite heavy, as you might imagine. Now, I've gone a drum winch for this boat because I think it suits the boat perfectly. Because I'm mounting this winch above deck, I've gone the Triple S, which is stainless motor, stainless gearbox, stainless drum, and I'm actually thinking of mounting it onto the front of the wheelhouse. It's a full steel structure, it's pretty strong. Obviously we'll do a little bit of extra reinforcing too, but I think the chances of pulling the steel of this wheelhouse out before the anchor rode, which is here, snaps, is pretty much zero. Then on top of that, we're going to be marrying it up with a Rockner anchor that I got from my mate Brett at Ocean Solutions. So thank you to Brett and thank you to Savwinch for helping getting this organised. You can change the orientation of the motor to the mounting base for the winch itself, the drum winch. This suits me perfectly though. What I'm thinking and do is mounting it flush on the wheelhouse here with the motor pointing down, and then these will go through cable glands in the deck straight down here. If you imagine an extended line from the bowsprit here coming through to here, this is the height I want to have the center of the drum, I think. Actually no, now I think about it, probably the top of the drum with some rode on it, anchor rode on it, because it's always going to come from the top. But what it does mean though is there's still plenty of room to come down and have the motor hanging below. So I've got to figure out my position for this, figure out what's behind here. It does have bracing across, but I'll put big thick steel washers essentially. When I say washers, I'm saying, you know, this big behind here, and we'll get this mounted up. I do have to modify the bowsprit. It's not really set up to hold an anchor. I'll probably put a second roller, more of a V roller. And the other thing is this boat sits on a mooring all the time. So really what I need is a dual bowsprit. One for the anchor to go on and one for the mooring to run along. Failing that, I could have some fair leads and maybe like a yoke with a dual set up from the mooring. We'll see, we'll figure something out, but definitely needs modification there as well. This is the anchor I threw overboard when I had the overheat problem. Little CQR anchor, not huge, but by the time it's down 15 meters with a bit of chain and everything, it was quite a hassle. Obviously it had gone into a muddy bottom, as you can see. Held the boat beautifully, but it was quite hard to get up. So this will be my spare anchor that'll live in the anchor well here in the chain locker, and the Rockner will sit on the bowsprit permanently. Here are some scuba cylinder racks I got from New Zealand on mail order, and 3 each side, so that'll do. I've only got 4 at the moment, but I think, you know, if we start doing this seriously, we're probably going to have the 6 easily. So these are stamped, they're all steel cylinders, not aluminium, so I might give them a brush up and just see if I can read the stamps on them. Yeah, it looks like they were January 2019, so definitely all out of date. Alright, this one's pretty full, so I'll keep this one on board. Got about 5 hours on the engine now, so I'm just going to go down and do a good visual inspection, you know, check for leaks, anything that looks odd. You know, I think you just can't be casting your eye over things for figuring out if there's a problem. A few things done. Got our stuffing box double nutted finally. Prop shaft came out, got checked to be straight, it's fine. The flange on the end of the prop shaft got machined, which will help with that sort of, you know, dial gauge process. Also got drilled and tapped for a different way of locking the nut in place so it doesn't come undone. Everything else is checked, it's all pretty much perfect. The nut on the end, I believe, was machined a little bit, and now there is a sleeve that goes between the prop shaft and the Polyflex coupler to keep them centered on each other. So that was another critical change that needed to be made. This is the hose here that popped when I had the overheat. I can't even budge it now that I've swapped to the T-bolt clamp, so I think that'll be fine from now on. Just a bit of a teething problem. Looking at upgrading this alternator to a proper marine one designed to run at the rev range that the Detroit runs at, but, you know, work in progress. But belt looks fine, so that's good. No chewing out there. One thing I don't currently have is any sort of catch can for the airbox drain on the Detroit. Need to sort that out sooner rather than later. One thing I was really surprised about with this muffler is how cool it actually stays. So I'm not as worried about it as I was. Even when you've been running for, you know, well over an hour, it's, you know, it's hot, but it's not like touch it and get burnt hot. It's just warm enough to make you sort of take your hand off and go, oh, that's hot. You know, so it's actually not that bad. Now, what I was going to do originally was get one of those stainless shrouds to go around it, but they're offset and we really don't have the clearance with the lid for the engine bay. So instead, I'm just going to wrap it in fiberglass tape. The downside to wrapping it is that we'll be covering up our humerus acetone mark, which in my mind now is the undies of Turin, but better have it safe so no one burns themselves. There's a special tool for tightening these stainless cable ties, but I don't have it, so I'm just going to push a screwdriver in here and pull on this with some diagonal cutters. A few people have asked about the cruising speed of Renko, so we've got 3 miles of salt ahead of us. I think it's time to do a time trial. Up to temperature, so let's give it the beans. I think we can call that top speed. Time to pop the chute.
At the end of the day, I picked up Paul and we headed out to Broken Bay to go and have a fish. In New South Wales, you can currently have 2 people on a boat and go fishing, so it was nice to get some fresh air. And actually, as of this weekend, we can now visit people, which is nice. Nice to have some of those restrictions getting relaxed finally. Well, thanks for watching. That's it for this week. Looking forward to getting that anchor winch installed. I'm really, just be nice to be able to both operate it from in the wheelhouse and be able to do it single-handedly without, the stress. So that'll be great. Worth noting too with our little speed test that that was going into the wind and into the current. So I imagine, no current, you're probably looking 8-9 knots. With the current, you could get 10-11 sort of thing. So I didn't do any averaging runs in multiple directions or anything like that. All right, well, take care and I'll catch you soon. See ya. After annoying Eddie for a little while, I went over and got some shots of Pedley's sailing boat because he's selling it at the moment. It's Carter 33, and I'll put a link to the ad in the description just in case that's the sort of thing you're looking for at the moment.